We are exploring the fascinating cross-cultural exchanges that have shaped human civilization, particularly the profound influence of ancient Egypt on the Islamic Empire. For example, the Islamic Caliphate wisely embraced the irrigation techniques that ancient Egypt mastered, leading to agricultural prosperity across their vast empire. Welcome back to Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ, and we are back again today with our favorite panel, Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim, and my one and only co-host, JD Yusef. Welcome back, guys. So we decided today to talk about the link or the cross-adaptability of civilization and knowledge between the ancient Egyptians and the Islamic Empire. Because I was sitting one day, I'm just thinking about Egypt because I'll be going back in November, thank God. And I wondered why Abu Bakr alayhi salam sent Amr ibn al-As to Egypt to spread Islam there and check out what they have. So I have a feeling that the Islamic Empire, with all their curiosity and drive for knowledge and advancement, figured out that, hold on a second, ancient Egypt has been so advanced through the years. Why can't we, if it's possible, incorporate Egypt into the Islamic Empire so we can work together, collaborate together, and learn from their advancement to benefit the Islamic Empire? And I think that's one of, I believe personally, from everything that I read and everything that I watch and everything that I've observed in Egypt, that's one of, I think, secrets of the success of the Islamic Empire. But anyhow, that's why we're here, to sit down with our panel, to exchange ideas and to exchange ways of perceiving ancient Egypt and see if we can come to a conclusion. And also, as I said, this platform, it's all about mindset, and hopefully we'll give our audience the chance to make their own conclusion. So let's bring JD Yusef in, and he has a fascinating fact to share with us.
Yes, thank you for that intro, Dr. Slava, and thank you, Dr. Ihab. Yeah, we have a pretty amazing episode, and always want to bring it into perspective and make sure that it resonates and it stays relevant with you all, the listeners and viewers, right? But essentially what we're doing is challenging the narrative, the status quo, right? How ancient knowledge still shapes our world, okay? What if much of what we believe about the origins of science, philosophy, and medicine is incomplete, right? Western narratives often trace the roots of modern civilization to Greece and Rome, right? Especially here in the States, right? That's what we're taught, especially at a young age, in grade school, high school. But before Socrates, Plato, and Hippocrates, there was Imhotep, Phanhotep, and Thoth, okay? This episode isn't about discrediting others or other cultures or peoples, but about reclaiming forgotten legacies and giving credit where it's long overdue, right? So I think this should be a pretty exciting episode. And again, piggybacking off of what we did in the first half, right? So I'll just set it off and then we'll kind of have a discussion, right? So ancient Egypt, again, what I consider them the real OGs of knowledge, right? Some key points. The Egyptians developed mathematics for engineering and pyramid construction. We spoke a little bit about that in the first episode. We're also going to build a little bit upon that. Medicine, they documented surgeries, diagnostics, and had detailed medical papyri. Okay, and we discussed a little bit about that as well. Astronomy, they tracked celestial movements with precision. And again, they were able to trace it with setting and positioning the pyramids to reflect these astronomical observations, which is quite astounding. Why is this relevant, right? Not only is the writing systems, the hieroglyphics, what helped us kind of uncover a lot of these philosophical, ancient, science facts. But many of these fields are cornerstones of science and medicine today, which were given to us directly from the Egyptians. That's why it's relevant, right? Challenging the myth that these ideas only took shape in Greek philosophies, but believe it or not, a lot of these Greek philosophers studied in ancient Egyptian temples, and that's clearly documented by Pythagoras, who was an ancient mathematician. Plato and Thales, believe it or not, were said to have spent time in, especially growing up in ancient Egyptian temples. But from that being said, there's a beautiful quote that kind of resonates, right? Egypt is the mother of civilization. Yet we often call her children by their names, and right, her children are going to be the descendants of these other cultures, right, who took a lot from these ancient cultures and developed and built upon them, right? Credit isn't often given, but again, that's why we're here. What do you think about that, Dr. Ihab and Dr. Slava?
No, so really quick, just for our audience, if some of you just joined us for the first time, the episode that JD Yusef is referring to is episode number 32. So episode 32, we introduced the whole concept of how the ancient Egyptian civilization influenced our knowledge and many of the advancements methods in agriculture, architecture, engineering, to our, new societies, the societies that came after them. So that's number one, and number two, the fact that we are. Remember, this platform, we're trying to give you guys as much information and data as possible, but as we are discussing it and as we are doing this cross conversation, hoping that you guys can look at it in a different light and realize that, we are all connected. There's no separation between what we call hadara in Arabic, which is civilizations. But we would like to tap into why some of the knowledge was lost and what if that knowledge got preserved. How would humanity be like? What would our life look like? How much advanced we would be, and why our humans have the tendency to destroy their predecessors' knowledge and hard work? I mean, we're talking about, thousands of years of civilizations for the newcomer just start all over. It doesn't make sense because it will be smarter from humans to preserve that knowledge, to give them that shortcut and pick up where the other, the past civilization ended, pick it up from there and build upon it. But humanity or humans are so selfish and very egotistic, I think, because number one, we want to fulfill our narrative. It's our time. It's our civilization. It's our history. We want to rewrite everything. We want to reinvent everything. But why would you? It's like buying a house from a couple. That house is so advanced, has everything that you need, and you just touch it up and you make it better instead of completely demolishing the house and start from the foundation up. And then you're stumbling. I don't get it. I mean, we need to realize that previous civilizations happen, I believe, for the purpose of advancing humanity. But humanity is constantly shooting itself in the foot by destroying what our ancestors done to start all over. So I don't get the fascination of starting all over comes from. But I want to bring Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim in to put in his opinion.
So I don't believe it's about them starting over, or them thinking about, oh, we're gonna, we want to take the culture that's there, that they're attacking, basically, preserve it and expand upon it. If I remember correctly, just in ancient times, they would completely annihilate a culture, people, everything, and basically wipe them from history. And the reason why they do it is because they don't want anybody from that civilization or people to resurface. and take back their land in any way. So one of the first things you do is get rid of knowledge, right? Because knowledge, that's power, of course. But if you get rid of the knowledge, then maybe those remnants of that civilization cannot rebuild itself because you burned all the books and got rid of all the, the papyrus that was there with all the writings. But it's always a reason that they do it because they have to reset their narrative and their civilization to kind of be overshadow what was there before. And it would have been amazing, and I agree with you that if somebody were to take ancient knowledge and just continue with it, right? Where would we be now? We might be way more advanced than we are, I believe. A lot of these ancient cultures, ancient Egypt, I think the Mesopotamia. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge in ancient Babylon, and possibly from those ancient cultures. That's where I believe ancient Egypt kind of got a lot of its information. And maybe there's another civilization we don't know about that was wiped off the face of this earth that may be been a precursor to these other civilizations. So that's the interesting thing that I would like to see, hopefully in archaeology, that they find out about this. So, but that's my
Ihab, I
thoughts on
mean,
it.
so Ihab, if humanity has a tendency of canceling everything previously and starting all over. So number one, you just mentioned that because you have to cancel that previous knowledge or previous existence of that civilization because they perceive it as a threat. We don't want anybody to interfere with our way, right? This is our way or the highway. This is the way. That's number one. Number two is, I'm going to do it my way. Just like when you teach a kid to ride a bike, right? You tell them, pedal, make sure you balance, hands on the handles. If you feel like you're in danger and tipping over, just put your foot down, brake, right? But if that kid decides like, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm just going to do it my way. So they riding, they tip over and they fall and they cry. They come to you and it's like, oh, it hurts. Well, I told you not to do that, right? So why does humanity has the tendency to do that? Number one. Number two, and if humanity had the tendency constantly rejecting the advancement of others before us, why did civilizations exist? Why the Earth or our race or our history did not consist of, all right, inventing the wheel, moving on, discovering fire, moving on, discovering reading and writing, papyrus, making paper, moving on. Why did civilizations went above and beyond, right? Above and beyond any humanity can achieve, and then having another civilization comes in, destroy everything and start all over. Destroy everything. Why? I just don't get it. I think I'm just philosophizing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're not really kind of getting the roots of human nature, right? If you take us back to thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, the way survival is there was always an alpha male. There was there was always this tribe maybe that was conquering other tribe. Who knows? But there in our nature, we are built DNA wise to be like survival of the fittest. And I think that happens in other animals and the animal kingdom. And I don't want to call us animals, but we are part of, evolution. So we have to kind of realize that it's very hard to get rid of this ancient, parts of your DNA. I think it's still inside us, but what's happening as we're evolving, and I don't think we're evolving like in the last couple thousand years physically. I think we're more evolving in our minds. And that is what is telling us, oh, don't destroy previous knowledge. I mean, they did it, maybe a couple thousand years ago, but as we're moving closer and closer to modern times, it's something that we are preserving. We are preserving knowledge now. So the next generation, the future generation, is going to have our knowledge and the knowledge from the past couple thousand years, maybe, or a couple of hundred years, let's say. But I want to shift gears and just kind of say just one thing. I did some research on, and we're talking about this right now, modern versus ancient Egypt, the change, the continuity, and the transformation, right? While modern day Egypt is dramatically different, obviously, than ancient Egypt, it still carries the echoes and the influence of this rich past. And we're going to probably dive into this a little bit later, but that's just the kind of, we're bringing the past into the present now, from ancient Egypt to the current modern Egypt. So I do want to talk a little bit more about this. And the major changes that have happened are religion, language, lifestyle and economy, governance, and all that. But we'll touch on all these different points. And then there's what did we keep, and what did we continue, and what transformed from ancient Egypt to current and modern Egypt.
Now, on that note, let's bring JD Yusef in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the echoes from the ancient to the modern really resonate, right? And I attribute it to the breadth of knowledge that's built upon. So you mentioned something about how, the cancel culture, and to me, like the Renaissance is one of the original cancel cultures. It's almost like they rediscovered everything and then attributed it to new people, like it just came from nowhere, right? So, but what's interesting is, especially in the theme of kind of how the Islamic empire kind of built upon, right? So when Europe was plunged into the Dark Ages, the Islamic Golden Age preserved, translated, and advanced ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Persian knowledge, right? So it's interesting in history, the Arabs were born in the Arabian Peninsula, right? And to their east and west are huge empires that have lasted centuries, millennia, right? So naturally, they're gonna not only learn, but lean on these peoples, believe it or not. Not so much the Romans, but for sure the Persians, right? The Persians, honestly, I think don't get a lot of credit, especially for the advancement of the Arabs. But the Arabs had to learn from the Persians. They were empire builders. So they knew how to control people. They knew how to get into a new area where different religion, different cultures, different customs, but still be able to communicate, do business, delegate, have a functioning government, excuse me. So that's very, very underestimated. And also, in the time of the Arabs, the Baghdad House of Wisdom, what is it called? Beit al-Hikmah, I think in Arabic, became the intellectual hub of the world, right? So essentially, the Arabs tried to mimic the library in Alexandria, right? The fountain of knowledge, where all the ancient knowledge was. And I also don't buy the fact that all that knowledge was lost and burned. I think it was honestly stolen. That's a MO, a modus operandi of a lot of these colonizer cultures, believe it or not. Take it, steal it, and then, hey, we came up with the idea all over again, right? So, it's I don't think they burned everything, but anyway, I digress. Arab scholars like Al-Khwarizmi is known for the articulation and coming up with algebra, right? Ibn Sina in medicine, and Al-Hazan in optics fused Greek philosophy with Persian and Indian text, believe it or not, right? So again, the Arabs are taking upon all of these other cultures. It's not like they're looking at them out of jealousy or spite and saying, "Oh, they came up with this, and now no." They're saying, hey, this is beautiful. It's technology. It's making life a little easier. Let's see how we can modify it. That's what we're doing today, guys, right? And let me make a pretty profound point. You know, when we're learning and reading and bathing in this history, right? Fair point to know. You actually, the listeners, have a lot more in common with the ancient Islamic Arabian Empire, these people, than you do with the Greek or Romans, who again were mostly pagan for their time, right? So how they thought, how they acted, this Abrahamic faith is very much in line with how all of you think. You know, even though you may be Christian or Jewish to or whatever religion you come from, but that's something to keep in mind, right? Last couple points. Persian, ancient Zoroastrian schools and libraries seeded much of this Arabian knowledge. So everything that came out of the East, all the Persians had compiled, right? And they had vast interactions with Hind and even China, right? I think the Tang dynasty. But all of this came into Baghdad, and then everything from the West came into Baghdad. So it was like a beautiful meeting point for everything that humanity kind of came up with. And again, combined with Egyptian and Persian wisdom, the Islamic values of inquiry and learning just exploded. Again, everybody was hungry for knowledge. They wanted to build. So some modern implications, much of what we use today, math, hospitals, surgical instruments, pharmacology, actually comes from this layered heritage, right? So it's not fair to say it's this one group or one people. No, if we're all one race, one people, it should be a human thing. So with that being said, Dr. Slava, Dr. Ihab.
No, I love how you brought in the Persian Empire, and I think the oldest civilization, correct me guys if I'm wrong, were the Sumerians, right? It's in Iraq. It's even older than ancient Egypt, right? So that
Recorded
was
history,
lost.
correct? Yeah.
Right. So I don't know why there was a huge gap between the Sumerians and ancient Egypt, and from ancient Egypt, Persia. Now, the Persian Empire was the number one obstacle in the face of the Islamic Empire. Right. And the moment that Islamic Empire secured Persia, they flourished. That was the ignition of expansion of the Islamic Empire. But that tells you how vital Persia, geographically, politically, civilization-wise, advancement was important for the Islamic Empire to secure in order to fuel that engine and expand into Asia, because that was the door to Asia, was Persia. Egypt was the door to Africa. But last point that I want to make and comment on what you said about the Islamic Empire, I think because Islam came out with emphasizing that we are all equal. There's a huge emphasis in equality, inclusivity. We're all equal. There's no difference. So let's work together. Let's work together. Unfortunately, greed and conflict and division and political polarization caused the downfall of the Islamic Empire. But those are very, very interesting point. But let's bring Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim in. What else you would like to share with us?
So I kind of bring it to where we're talking about religion and Islam. One of the interesting things was the major changes in from ancient times, ancient Egypt until now, is that they went from a polytheistic type religion to monotheistic, which in Egypt right now, majority is Muslim, but there's also Christian minority there. So that is one of the things that transformed. Language obviously transformed from hieroglyphics. There was obviously a spoken language in ancient Egypt. These hieroglyphs were sounds, I believe, is what I read, and the sounds, when you put them together, make a word, like men otep, like that kind of thing they would do. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's just the sounds of the hieroglyphs. And some of this language, this ancient language, I believe, is still in with the Coptics, in the Coptic language. Yusuf can probably elaborate on that a little bit more. I think he knows a little bit more about that. And then modern day Egyptians right now, they speak Arabic, obviously, right? And the lifestyle and economy in the past and the present, all agriculture just is around the Nile, just so everybody understands that the majority of the Egyptian modern civilization and ancient civilization lived on the Nile. So, it's where fresh water is where the food is grown. But now modern Egypt has a different type of economy. It's a little more diverse. You have tourism, you have natural resources like oil and gas, and technology. Okay. And then the governance is also different. Back in ancient times, it's a pharaoh, basically a king. So the pharaohs were considered like gods in the past. And now we have a republic in Egypt, with a president. So, these are the changes that have happened, but those things that have kind of stayed the same, that really, this is the most amazing thing. Modern day Egyptians are generally considered direct descendants of ancient Egypt. Okay. Studies have shown that 85% of the shared DNA is with ancient populations from current modern Egyptians. So we share 85% of that DNA from ancient Egypt, which is pretty wild, because that really kind of resonates in a way, and it shows that this culture, this civilization has lasted over 5,000 years continuously. There was no break. There was no migration of people in and out because of, losing, the land to another, group or civilization or country. So this is something that is really neat. And I'm sure there are other countries. I believe Iran is one of them. It's lasted several thousand years, Persia, basically. So I'm sure there are others, but I mean, ancient Egypt, just looking at the DNA, the percentage of the DNA of the people of modern times sharing those with those of ancient times is really, really amazing.
I have a question for you, Ihab. Do you think that the ancient, and for JD Yusuf, just something that to brew on, kind of think outside the box a little bit? So I like to challenge some concepts. But do you think, guys, the ancient Egyptians had some kind of a knowledge of what invaders can do to their knowledge and civilizations, and that's why we only have, what is it, Ihab? Only 10% of what ancient Egypt
1%. 1% has been discovered.
Well, only 1% has been discovered. So not only they built this glory of a civilization, they managed to hide it for thousands and thousands of years. Not only that, they managed to hide it, they are making it difficult for us in this modern time with all the technologies that we have to discover it as fast as we want it to be discovered. So to me, logic tells me that not only ancient Egyptians were proficient in, agriculture, engineering, and architecture and design, but they actually thought ahead. So did they know in advance that, hey, listen, if we are not clever and creative in hiding our civilization to preserve it from being destroyed, because humans are naturally, they're very egotistic, they're very selfish, they're going to cancel all that we have accomplished. Let's find a way how to hide it and make it difficult. We're 2025 and we cannot dig fast enough, and we cannot discover fast enough what the 99% of ancient Egypt has built. Think about it. What do you guys think? Let's go to JD Yusuf.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, and it seems that our human history is still yet to be written, which is freaking crazy. But because right now, recorded human history only goes back to 6,000 BC. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey predates that to 10,000 BC, where they found civilization built underground, which is wild. So what does that mean? But again, humans, Homo sapiens, scientifically have been around 300,000 years, guys. 300,000 years, and we're only talking about 5,000 years. So like, what are we really talking about? Like, what's really going on, right? So this is the stuff that again is exciting and deserves a lot more insight and thought, right? So, but yeah, that's completely wild. Just to think 1% has only been kind of uncovered. I mean, since the new king took over in Saudi Arabia, archaeologists and historians and scientists are actually now for once being able to discover things that in the past they'd find something in the desert in Saudi Arabia. Maybe it's an ancient church or synagogue, and they just put sand back over it. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to talk about that, So no, again, that goes everything against human nature, what we've been talking about, the Islamic golden age, right? Like, what are we talking about? So again, it puts things into perspective, and it's very beautiful. So,
but also it's amazing that those discoveries become a threat of the existing governments or existing nation, because think about it, guys. Those discoveries are going to have a huge emotional impact on the discoverers, to the point that it will become a threat to their regime. That's the fascinating thing about the past civilization, that they built something that if the humans in 2025 finds it, they're going to have such an emotional connection to it. They might say, hey, hold on a second. We don't want Saudi Arabia. We want to believe in other civilization. Why can't we copy the civilization? Because we've been backwards. And this is so advanced. We want that to elevate our lifestyle or to improve our mindset or our perception about the world. Think about it. So discoveries is not only advancement in technology, or it's an advancement in the mindset of humanity. Because if you show me right now a concept that has been discovered, but been buried for thousands and thousands of years, I'm going to think twice and say, hold on a second. I used to believe in this that way. Now I have to believe in it in a different way. So the threat of changing the mindset of humans as we discover these ancient civilization is a threat to the existing nations, that they are telling those people that, no, this is the way, there's no other way. But there is another way, but we haven't discovered it yet. So are they keeping the discoveries from happening? Or did the ancient civilization are saying to us, you guys are not ready, because it's going to blow your mind? But go ahead, Ihab. Go ahead.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
real quick, Dr. Ihab, I'm sorry to interrupt. Real quick, something pretty fascinating that again doesn't get a lot of attention, but there's a French researcher by the name of Baghdad Djali Difallah, Difallah. And to Dr. Slava's point about, what does this discovery mean for humanity? What does it mean to our power, as a government or whatever, right? Apparently this gentleman, this French researcher, says that he found the tomb of Alexander, and it's located in Jordan, right? But it's located in Jordan, where it's still considered the Valley of the Kings, where the pharaohs would have been buried. So again, when you're looking at geography, the Sinai Peninsula, it kind of jets in and goes into the land of Canaan a little bit, like it stretches into Jordan. Like all this was, client states of ancient Egypt. So imagine what this discovery of potentially Alexander the Great, so they say, this guy has evidence, and apparently the governments, specifically the Jordanian king, has not allowed any excavation or outside researchers after this gentleman said what he found. So that is again on another level and very, very exciting to say the least. But I'm sorry, Dr. Ihab, go ahead.
So, I mean, we were talking about the Arabian Peninsula, and so they had done some studies, and they found that the people from the Arabian Peninsula, the Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula, not Levantine, but the Arabian Peninsula, are linked, and they came from the ancient Egyptian people. So their
Oh,
DNA is ancient Egyptian. They are not all of a sudden, they didn't pop out of nowhere. They didn't come from the north, or from where Persia was, or anywhere in Europe. It's just they are originally from Egypt, and they probably migrated there and moved there, and then that's where the Arabs kind of all started. Their civilization, or their tribes, basically.
yep. That's not a crazy point, by the way, because I've always been taught Usul al-Arab is in Yemen. So like the real Arab comes from Yemen, right? The
Yep.
the DNA, right? Well, again, who is the Yemeni tied into DNA and genetically? The Habashi, the Ethiopians, right? Ethiopians have a shared lineage and culture with the ancient Egyptians and the Sudanese, the Nubians, right? So
Yep.
again, what are we really talking about, right? We have this beautiful chain, this unbroken chain that, again, a lot of these cultures or people or times want to break and say, no, this
Yes.
doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
that's a really, really beautiful point, Dr. Ihab. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did
Because
not know that.
when you say, like, oh, the Arabs are, you know, they're these people, Quraysh, the tribes, they're basically Egyptians from ancient times. But when they look at Egyptians now, they don't look at them in the right light, I believe. So I think this chain is broken because people break the chain. They want that chain broken. Dr. Slava touched on it about, why do we, like, really destroy civilizations? Why does humanity do that? It's because it's in the nature of humans to destroy, and it's improving, obviously, as we move forward in time, but it's still happening around the world. It's not like it's all of a sudden has stopped because our knowledge, we became more intelligent, we have computers. It's still happening. You still have people killing people for just anything, for land, for power, whatever it might be. And it's something. It is getting better, but I'd love to see the world in 50, 100 years from now. Be very interesting. Are we gonna? Is it gonna keep improving, or kind of go in the wrong direction? But I'm hoping it does improve, and with all this AI and quantum computers, and we get somewhere really, really in the future where war has ended, famine has ended, and aggression upon each other has ended. So that's my hope, and we'll see what happens. But we look back at ancient Egypt and how it connects to current modern Egypt, and we made that link from ancient Egypt to modern Egypt to the Arabian Peninsula. Uh, there's a really interesting. Again, I go back to the Coptic church liturgy. It serves as a bridge between the current language and the ancient language of ancient Egyptians. Shem and Nassim, right? So that's the spring festival, is a tradition observed for thousands of years since ancient Egypt. We still observe that, and enduring presence of, like, ancient Egyptian symbols, mythology, art, folklore. That is still there, right? Even fashion, still. If you look at some of the clothes, some of the people in Egypt wear in the countryside, it's kind of reminiscent of some of the ancient Egyptian wardrobe. So, and then, of course, the continuity of pottery, craftsmanship, glass making. It's been passed down for generations, and that. Speaking of that, the different potteries and things that have been passed down from generations. When we were in Luxor, we visited this alabaster the factory, and these gentlemen were outside, and they were kind of chiseling away, making like beetles and different different little artifacts for people to purchase. They're still using some of the old techniques, and then you go inside this factory, and they explain to you how it's been passed down for thousands of years. These guys are still chiseling with some of the old, they're not moving on to use like modern equipment and milling, machines and with lathes and things like that. These guys, I saw them and they were chipping away and making these nice little figurines and beetles and some little ancient Egyptian sculptures. And you find out that when they gave us that tour, they tell us that, this has been something that's been there from ancient times, has been passed down from generation to generation, and this family now is carrying that torch. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Slava. She looks like she wants to say something about this because she was there.
Oh my God, Ihab, you just put a salt in the wound. I missed that. You brought back amazing, amazing memories. But before I start my rant about Egypt, I'm very biased about it. Not because I'm married to an Egyptian. Married to an Egyptian, it was amazing. But going to Egypt, and then seeing the Egyptians really, almost like I felt like I renewed my vows, to my Egyptian husband, because you're amazing and you people are amazing, because I've seen it. Not only I heard it and I just believed it because I'm married to him and because my dad lived there and my aunt graduated from University of Cairo. But, let me just go back to and give you my opinion about what you guys have touched upon, talking about those, ancient civilization and also Egypt. So there are two things that humans struggle with: recognizing others for their achievements and their advancement. It takes a lot of humility. You have to be a very, very humble, very peaceful person, basically free of stress and free of fear, to recognize somebody else's achievement, right? But the majority of humans are introverted, people-oriented. If that's the case, why did those civilizations were faced by the resentment, right? Of, no, I'm not going to recognize it as civilization. I'm going to make my own. Maybe that because it taps into the identity crisis challenge that the humans constantly are fearing, right? So who am I? The humans are, and you talk to, I have talked to patients with mental health. They sometimes mental health get triggered because those patient or those people lose identity, lose purpose in life, right? So two things we're talking about: the ability of recognize others for their achievement, for their civilization, for their advancement, and accept it, embrace it, even adapt it into something amazing. But we're not going to recognize because we are fearful of losing our identity. We need to establish our own identity. That tendency destroys civilization, in my opinion. And I cannot simplify it much more. But going back to Luxor, Aslan, I left my heart in Luxor, seriously. And in the family that Ihab's talking about, they are licensed by the government. That's how smart the Egyptian government is. So they only license one family that can actually duplicate Egyptian artifacts, right? To control the people copying and selling, saying, oh, it's real. But they did have some pieces that are 50, 100 years old that had been carved by their ancestors too. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing that we mentioned. Yeah, absolutely, Ehab. So I'm not going to take too much time about Egypt because I can talk for hours. Go ahead, JD Yusef.
No, I think that's quite remarkable. Again, you guys are basically taking everything that we discussed and putting it into perspective. And you were there, you saw it. So I think that's pretty amazing. Where I know we briefly talked about Egypt and Ethiopia and kind of the connections. I think, especially with the Coptic church that was mentioned, the Coptic Church basically enshrines the Coptic language, which is a form of ancient Egyptian. It's like the third demotic form. And how do they actually write it out? They actually use Greek alphabets, but they've modified the alphabets to take some of the ancient hieroglyphics, and they'll actually like make a symbol, and that corresponds to like what Dr. Ihab said, to a sound. It's like Latin. It's a dead language, so you'll hear it in the liturgy, yes, but most people don't really speak it unless maybe you are clergy. But if you guys haven't ever been to a Coptic church before, sitting in there listening to Coptic being spoken is wild. It's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very beautiful too. But you can hear its oldness. I really don't know how to describe it, but I did take a introduction to linguistics and anthropology class, and that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in school. But the language aspect is very, very interesting and beautiful. And also another point about the Coptic people. So there's a misconception that, again, if you're only Coptic, then you have a right to share into this ancient Egyptian culture because you, as a Christian, were directly descended from these ancient peoples, right? And so if you're Muslim, then you have this mixed peninsular Arab blood, which doesn't really count as. By the way, that narrative flips on its face too. According to DNA, according to genetics.
Yeah, I can even give you mine. Yeah.
Yeah, we can dive into that in a little bit, and also the same narrative applies for our Lebanese brothers and sisters who, again, you'll hear a lot of the Christians, my community, have family members that won't say they're Arab, which in fact, maybe according to DNA, they probably don't have a lot of peninsular Arab blood, right? But also, we're Arab because we're culturally Arab, linguistically we're Arab, so we call ourselves Arab, right? We're in that Arab fold. But also, if you look at the Lebanese Christians, brothers and sisters who are Muslim, they have the same exact DNA. There's this misconception that when Islam came in, they came in and, these droves and forces, they came in with the sword, and that wasn't the case at all. Just read Bishop Sophronius, who was the key holder to Jerusalem when the Muslims first knocked on the door, and listen to what he said about them. Right? It's not. They were not many in numbers either. 60 to 70% of the ancient Christian world resided in the Islamic Empire. So, like, Muslims were the keepers of our faith. So that's something, again, they don't really tell you. But anyway, go ahead, Dr. Ihab.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were talking about the percentages of Egyptians. So for me, I did an ancestry.com blood test. I sent it in. I was 83% Egyptian and a 10% Arabian Peninsula, right? So there is some of that in me, right? And probably has to do with my link to the past, in the Islamic past. Slava can always touch on that. Ethiopian, here's something amazing. Ethiopian and Eritrean, 4%. From the Ivory Coast and Ghana, 1%. And 1% from Nigeria. And then 1% from North Africa, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Libya, for instance. And, back to Egypt again. So that's are my breakdown. But again, what we were talking about. I had said that there's some research done that 85% of the Egyptians are linked, that their DNA is linked to ancient Egypt. So it kind of makes sense that I'm 83%. I'm almost 85% Egyptian, but I'm 10% from the Arabian Peninsula, from Saudi Arabia, Emirates, so, which is kind of very neat in its way. So, and one of the big things that really is an emphasis, and I learned this when I went there, I never felt this till I was in Egypt. There's an emphasis on family, community, and hospitality. And it's something, that until you go there to actually experience it yourself, you won't know how what I'm explaining. It's a feeling. It's not like a visual. Of course, visually visually people are nice. They're kind, of course, but there's a feeling of hospitality versus viewing hospitality, right? Visual hospitality. There's a difference. The two they work together. But sometimes when you go somewhere in a certain country, they're very hospitable, but you don't feel the hospitality. They do it possibly maybe because they're being paid, to work or something. But that is, in essence, the values that remain central for Egyptian culture that echoes from the past of ancient Egypt. Because the ancient Egypt structure was that. They actually had these kind of pillars, you would say, of family, community, and hospitality, which is wild from 5,000 years ago, to see something like that and to hear about that. I would have loved to go back in time and kind of witness it myself. But if we are saying this, that we have echoes from the past and it's come into modern Egypt, it's amazing. And I don't know. That's one of my, the next time I go this year, I'm going to kind of really absorb more and more of that, and really get into it. Because, like the first time we went, I was in like shock and awe. Everything was coming in like full input, and now I kind of know what to expect. And when I get there, I'll just kind of really be more absorbing and not be like overwhelmed in a way, because I'll know what to expect and be very welcoming to it, obviously. So
Yeah, I think you were overwhelmed in a good way.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, it's very positive. But going back to Ihab's point, his lineage. So Ihab's Abdurrahim family, and I mentioned it, I think, in the earlier episodes, is fi Abdurrahim al-Qina'i. That's where Abdurrahim family came from, the name. Abdurrahim al-Qina'i, he's from Morocco. So at one point, he went down to Mecca for Hajj, for pilgrimage. And after Hajj, he was just, talking to people, and he found out he was the descendant of Sayyidina Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So when he found that out, he went to Egypt, to Qina, to Luxor, Upper Egypt, and he built the first mosque as a appreciation or homage to his lineage, min Quraysh, min Mecca. And then after that, he started building, I think he built like 3 or 4 different mosques, but they are not only, they were not set up to be only a place of worship. They were centers for charity, for raising money for the poor, shelter, hospitals, like little clinics to help the need, and also to have a court where people come in and anybody that needs favors from the Islamic Empire to help them land, education, housing, money, jobs, anything like that. So it was more a community center by Abdurrahim al-Qina'i. Then he went back to Morocco. Now, knowing that, when Ihab found out did the ancestry test. So we're talking about, Africa, and then coming from Africa into, probably they went Africa into Yemen, from Yemen to the Arabian Peninsula, from Arabian Peninsula to Egypt, from Egypt back to Morocco. So they made the whole circle, and that's his ancestors, right? So remember, when you do the ancestry background, I learned that if you have only 1% or 2% of your blood from Somal, for example, because that is where you started. So where you started is the least percentage in your blood genetically.
Wow.
The highest percentage in your genes is where your ancestors settled in, right? Because when you settle in and you take a permanent home in that country, you start reproducing. You get married, you create a family, you dig your roots, right? So they went from Africa. That's just my theory, that his ancestors started in Africa, South Africa, and then went through Somal, through Yemen, through the Arabian Peninsula, back to Egypt, right? Or maybe started in Morocco. They went Morocco, South Africa, then into Yemen, into the Arabian Peninsula, and they settled in Egypt. So that is a fascinating discovery. Not only, that's what makes our Egypt trip very, very special, because he discovered his ancestry, which is, just fascinating.
That's amazing.
But yeah, again, it's really hard to describe their spiritual kind of the rediscovery of yourself when you're in Egypt. Egypt is ancient, and you talk to Christian and Muslims in Egypt, and the Christians will tell you, and they're taught in school, and they know that Islam came to Egypt in peace. Very, very peaceful, very, very passive way, not by the sword, not by force. They did not destroy any churches. Yeah, they helped them move churches if they needed the property for, I don't know, military post or what have you, but they offered to move the church or rebuild the church somewhere else. So some of the churches you'll see, when you go to Egypt, anybody that's interested, you'll actually see that, oh, this church was here, but it was moved by Amr ibn al-As or Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, commissioned that, and they paid for it, and they also paid for people to move around too, in order to give Islam and Christianity the environment they can coexist together. But when you talk like where Ihab was born in Shubra, 40% Christians. I mean, you walk around, there's no sign of Islam at all. So you get crosses, like I said, Jesus posters everywhere. I took a picture of a bishop that's walking down the street from his apartment, literally in his own cloaks and big silver cross. It was beautiful. But yeah, I think, what we're trying to do with these episodes is to hopefully bring the audience, into the realm of the reality of what exactly is going on by reflecting into history, basically. But since we are coming to the end of our episode, do you guys have any last words before we end this? Go ahead, Yusuf.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, Dr. Slava, if you don't mind. I just wanted to kind of bring this all home and just try to make it relevant. Why does this matter? What we're discussing today? How is this applicable? Why should we care? Right? In a world where AI, technology, and STEM dominate the headlines, right? This is your reminder that these roots, the remainder of these roots in these fields, actually come from these ancient times that we've been discussing, right? And it invites you guys as the listeners to question dominant historical narratives, to also take pride in your Arab or African or Eastern contributions to human civilization, right? Because that's something that's not highlighted here in the West, unfortunately. And it allows us to explore wisdom alongside innovation at the same time, right? So a lot of the challenges for modern Arabs and Africans today was basically just saying, hey, this knowledge was never lost. It was just displaced or untranslated, right? It was almost like we're the keepers of this ancient knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think with that being said, last reflecting question is, what systems of knowledge have we discarded because they weren't, open quote, Western, close quote, right? This idea of Western being this high form of humanity or civilization hasn't ever been a thing, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, this is a really, really good episode, and thank you guys so much for this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And kind of my wrap up for this whole kind of episode, I just want to kind of share with you something I saw, which kind of brings everything together. In essence, while the outer layer of Egyptian society has undergone profound shifts in religion, language, and governance, the inner core of its identity and cultural heritage remains deeply rooted in its ancient past. So that is, it really pulls together everything we were talking about today. And I think it's a very important thought that I want to leave everybody with. So
yeah. And Dr. Ihab, I actually have one last quote that I forgot. So this hopefully piggybacks on what you just said. So this isn't just about the past. It's about who we choose to become by knowing where we came from. And again, I know we've said that a million times, right? You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you come from. So it's time to dig deeper, not into the sand, but into the roots of human brilliance. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautifully, beautifully put. So, like I said, unfortunately, we are reaching the end of our episode. As a reminder, these episodes are uploaded on the Spotify and the Apple podcast platforms. And also they are available for you to watch on YouTube at the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel. So if you like this content, please like, share, and hit the notification button. That way you won't miss any episodes. And we hope to see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.